The battle at Warpus was only one of many battles fought during the long years of the war. German forces swept through Belgium and into northern France within a few short weeks. German troops had made it almost to the outskirts of Paris, but the Allies moved further than Germany expected. The French used every vehicle they could find, including Paris taxis, and rushed troops to the front. Eventually, the British and French managed to stop the German forces from advancing further. Protected by machine guns and barbed wire in the trenches in parallel lines for several hundred kilometers across the countryside, in some places enemy forces were only spread by only 25 meters. Soldiers in World War I mainly fought in trench warfare. The area between enemy trenches was called no man's land. The strip of land was armed with landmines and covered with barbed wire. Soldiers had to venture out into the area to attack enemy trenches, but they were an easy target for gunfire or exploding shells. Sometimes the wounded caught in no man's land cannot be brought back to safety. The soldiers in the trenches could do nothing but listen to the cries of their dying comrades. The Battle of the Western Front. In April 1915, the 1st Division of 20,000 Canadian troops were placed alongside the British on the Western Front. The front was the line where opposing armies faced each other in the horror of the years that followed. These troops would be joined by another 400,000 fellow Canadians, some of Canada's proudest moments and greatest contributions to the war or in the battle along the Western Front. Warpus. The Canadian 1st Division went to the front lines near the city of Warpus in Belgium. Their task was to hold about 3.5 kilometers of the line in the face of enemy German attack. They had only been in action for a few weeks when they faced the first deadly poison gas attack. The poison gas was made of chlorine, which was released by Germans from canisters. When the breeze was blowing, brass was blowing towards the Allied trenches. Chlorine gas burned the eyes and throat and destroyed their lungs. Soldiers who breathed the gas choked gas, coughed, and many died. The Canadians have only makeshift gas masks, but they managed to hold their position. The number of killed and wounded at Warpus was high. More than 5,200 Canadians died. 1 in 5 was listed as killed in action, gas, missing, or wounded. Because it was wet and dirty in the trenches, sickness and disease spread rapidly throughout the moist, common allies, which was trench foot and trench mouth. Trench foot was rotting of the flesh between and around the toes. Trench mouth was a painful infection of the gums. Everyone had body lice living in their mud-caked uniforms. Rats ran through the trenches, feeding on garbage and human waste. Some soldiers suffered by shell shock and nervous breakdown caused by the tremendous stress of the battle. After a few months in the trenches, units were allowed a break. They would go back behind the front lines. There they had a chance to sleep in a dry place, eat a decent meal, and above all, bathe and clean up. The soldiers in the trenches most often had wondered what they were doing there. On Christmas Eve 1915, Canadian and German soldiers joined in singing Silent Night across no man's land. The first day of the Battle of Somme in France was the most disturbing the Allies had ever suffered. Troops from Newfoundland and Labrador played a major part in the Battle of Somme. Newfoundland and Labrador was not then a part of Canada, but was a loyal colony of the British Empire, and fought on the side of the Allies. The troops, 90% of them, were wounded or killed, greatest disaster in 500 plus years. Canadians were known as storm troops. They often got called in to lead attacks. British Prime Minister said when the Canadians were going to go into attack, the Germans prepared for the worst. The battle lasted 5 months. Both armies were exhausted. Casualties on both sides were 1.25 mil. 24,000 of them were Canadians. The war itself was the real enemy. Vimy Ridge. At Vimy Ridge, 19 April 1917, the Canadians launched a surprise attack on the Germans. Because Canada wants the high ground, more Germans were killed than in the 2.5 years before. This area of Belgium had once been breathed the Northern Sea. When the sailing destroyed drainage ditches, the land became a sea of mud. Engines of simple trains sunk to the boilers. Tanks quickly bogged down. Almost 16,000 Canadians lost their lives at pasture land. The battle gained 7 kilometers of mud, which the Germans soon won back again.